Falls Community Schools. Kyle's in his 24th year of teaching instrumental music, has been teaching in Cedar Falls since 2009. He's currently the president-elect of the Iowa Bandmasters Association and is past president of Jazz Educators of Iowa and the Northeast Iowa Bandmasters Association. He's also served as the state IBA Jazz Affairs Chair and NEBA District Jazz Chair. Under his direction, Cedar Falls Jazz One has performed at the Midwest Clinic in 2022, as well as the IBA Conference in 2015, 2018, and 2021. Kyle was most recently recognized by the Iowa State Education Association as the 2023 Excellence in Education Awards state level winner and is the Iowa rep for the NEA Foundation Awards in Washington, D.C. in May of 2024. We look forward to Kyle's insight on running a successful jazz band program. This clinic is sponsored by Cedar Falls Community Schools. To ensure the enjoyment of all attendees at this presentation, we ask that you turn off or silence your electronic devices. Thank you for being here. Take it away.
Thank you all for coming. I put this together so that we could have a clinic in about 3 parts. And we're going to be looking at preparing, and that'll cover auditions, some of our equipment that often gets left by the wayside, some music and setup stuff. Then we'll talk about programming tips. And I have bad news, I'm not going to tell you what to play. But I'll make a few suggestions. And then we'll talk about performing. If at any time you want to interrupt and have a question, feel free. I've got time, and I would love to hear questions as they're having. You don't have to wait till the very, very end. If you want to, that's fine too. I'll have at the end as well. So this is stuff that's worked for me over the years, and things that have been successful for our program. And when I say that, I'm talking about me and Gerald Ramsey. I am fortunate to teach with him. He does our Jazz 2 and our top concert band. And before he was at Cedar Falls, Gerald was a 2A director and won the Iowa Jazz Championship. So for him, he thinks of Jazz 2 as his jazz band. He doesn't think of it as Jazz 2. He's treating them like professionals and asking them to hold a really, really high standard. So I'm super fortunate that that's their experience in the younger band. And then I get them, and I get to do some really cool stuff. Our elementary does not have jazz, but our junior highs do. We have some outstanding jazz pedagogues in the 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. So I'll kind of go through this in these 3 things, and we'll start with part 1. All right. One of the things that I get asked a lot is, how do you start? What do you do to get your jazz band going in the fall? And so jazz auditions happen. We usually do it right after State Marching Band Festival in Cedar Falls. We're in the Northeast District. I don't have to worry about SCIBA and having a jazz contest in December. You guys are crazy. But what I like to do is find something simple. And I used to try the All-State Jazz Etudes. I used to try the Mike Rubio book. I used to try some other stuff from Mike Tomorrow. What I found was just writing out ahead, either a 12 or 16 mark something, or for saxophones, they're usually better than my trombones. I might give them an AABA form. And so this is one of the ones we used last year. I had the trumpets do this, and I had the trombones do this, and then I gave the saxophones the Archery Suite. And I give this to our vibes players as well. I'll talk more about that later. But giving them a simple head at a medium tempo and making them play along with an etude, or with a play along. I use either a YouTube play along with a link on our website or an iReal Pro app. If you don't have that, get it, it's awesome. I found that I can get the most out of the auditions that way. The All-State Etudes are hard. All-State Jazz Etudes are just difficult. Even my best players struggle to learn those in time. And what we don't want is kids not trying out for jazz band. We want Jazz 2 to be successful. And so you're like, well, maybe that's too easy for trumpets. No, you can hear a kid play that and go, ta 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 ta, and you go, oh, yeah, Jazz 2. Or you might go, yeah, you have a great tone. I can teach you to swing. I'll fix your articulation. So something simple like that is what we use. We make our improvisational optional but encouraged, so they don't have to do it. I found that when I did require it, I used to say, if you want to be in Jazz 1, you have to improvise. Well, some kids just didn't try it out. So we make it optional but encouraged. When we're listening to the winds, That's what I'm adjudicating on. What don't you see on there? Note accuracy. I can fix that. I have found that if I take the band that sounds the best in auditions, we're going to have a pretty good year. If kids are playing in time along with the play along, it's going to be fine. You'll be able to keep up with the rhythm section of jazz band. The style, if they're young, I'm pretty forgiving. Soloing, yeah. If you can solo, great, but you didn't prepare the written part, maybe you just had trouble reading the written part and you didn't have enough time to work on it. I had a really great piano player for 3 years who struggled to read Come to Jesus in all notes. But he could improvise better than anything, and he could comp. And so he was like this unicorn who could play jazz piano, but wasn't a great pianist. You would not use him to accompany your 8th grade soloists for solo ensemble. We'll also check for range. Your lead player needs to play lead. And it's also kind of a good reality check when you're going, oh, well, I guess maybe I won't be playing this Nestico arrangement with the trumpet part going up to a high E flat. Maybe I should play realistic music for my band instead. So that's what we're looking at for auditions. For the rhythm section, things are a little bit different. I pass out a chart from a jazz piece that I might be considering, or one that I've done in the past. It'll have a mix of written line common chords. So the Jazz 2 or Jazz 3 level pianist might look at that and go, oh, well, I don't know what to comp there when it says C7, but here's some whole notes and I'll play this kind of improvised rhythm. So we encourage them to look at that. We want to see who can do it and then who might be just using the whole note thing. Same with guitar. I love to hear guitar play line. I like to use them that way as melodic accompaniment with saxophones, trombones, trumpets, whatever. And then also give them some chord symbols where there's nothing but slash. So they're playing line, and then all of a sudden they've got chunk for a little bit. The bass, I give them a written outline. Most of our bass players are converted from another instrument or coming over from our orchestra program, which we're fortunate to have. But they don't generally read changes. There are some very few exceptions, but I give them the written chord outline, and I make them play with the metronome. I want to hear their time. Can they stay with time? So the chord changes are there. In the 20 years I've been at Cedar Falls, I've had one student ignore the written line and play the changes and walk their own line instead. And that was the bass player we had in Ames. He was really, really special. Smart kid. For rhythm section auditions for drums, that's what I like to use. It's a modified, I told you not to use the All-State Jazz Etudes. This is what the jazz part is for drums, but I've shortened it. I give them a short 32-bar thing and a medium swing to read, because I want to know if they know how to do kicks or read setups or any of that stuff. Close enough counts. Then I ask them to do about 30, 40 seconds of 4 8-bar phrases. I want to hear a fast swing. I want to hear swing with brushes. If they have that technique, it's a plus, and I know I can program differently. And then I give them a choice. In the All-State Jazz requirement, it says you have to do funk at 96. Well, some of my kids have never heard a funk tune or play bad funk. And I'm just like, you have this Afro-Cuban groove you want to show off, great. Or Kate Gallion came in and she wanted to play a shuffle for me. And I was like, oh my God, that's a great shuffle. We're going to play a shuffle this year. So I'm often surprised at auditions when the drummer's like, that's fun. Like, give them a little ownership of their audition. So, I know I'm probably going to, at some point in your play an upswing, I'm probably going to play something that requires brushes. So I want to hear those two things. But then after that, I want to hear that. Questions so far? Sweet. This is kind of a pet peeve of mine, and it drives me crazy, is we don't take care of our drum set equipment very well. Unless you're a drummer, or unless Corey McBride is teaching you. Corey's student taught with us several years ago and helped us see the light about taking care of the drum set. That snare head would not be on my drum. It would be okay for a little bit, and then I would be like, oh my God, it's totally worn out. It sounds bad. You can get a new snare head for $17. So take care of your heads. Here's what I use. We use a remote-coded ambassador. because it has grit. And I change the snare head, the batter head on the top, probably twice a year. I put a new one on for auditions, and I put another new one on in February before we start going out and playing on the road. And I like the sound. I want to hear the grit. If your judges are oftentimes going, oh man, I can't hear your drum set on the ballad. Well, it's because your head's worn out. A new head will be just loud, you know. And you got to be able to give the kids something to dig into with their questions. I think cymbals are wildly underrated. For those of you that have good jazz bands or were jazz drummers or have friends that are drummers, you know how much they care about their cymbals. And I didn't believe it until we changed it. I thought, oh, that's fine. They sound like cymbals. And then John Zillerman and Brian Ziglis were at Talkhorn one year as judges and Clinician. And they both said, man, your cymbals sound crappy. And I went, okay, what do I do? And so Brian and John, like, I emailed them both. I'm like, both of you said the same thing. What do I do? And they took the time to send me this super long email, each of them with different opinions. And then we called a former student of ours, Spencer Ford, who works in Nashville at Fork's Drum Closet. And Spencer was like, okay, here's what I want to do. I'm going to pair up a whole bunch of different things. Some big rides, some little rides, maybe a couple crashes, and maybe some effects cymbals. And he sent, we agreed, okay, we're going to buy 3 cymbals from you, and you sent us a dozen on approval. And West Music will do that. I asked Rodney just a little bit ago, hey, I'm talking about this. Oh yeah, we would do that. And we played around with them. We played around with them in a combo setting. We played around with them in a big band setting. And these are the ones that we liked. We like this KCON 22, which is a really big cymbal. Our previous ride cymbal was a Zildjian A series, which most of us have in our bander. It creates a really high pingy sound, and it's kind of annoying when you're listening to it all day and you're judging. This cymbal doesn't sound like this. It's dark. It gets a wash going. I actually had to put a piece of tape on the bottom of it to take some of the wash out. Then I have a smaller ride crash, which is at 20. That used to be our big ride. And I really like that because you can go from a bigger sound to more of a smaller sound during the solo. And then our Istanbul 21 with the rivets, it's amazing. If you're playing a ballad and it sounds empty, just splash that thing and it just for 4 bars. And you're, oh, that's really nice. Or you're transitioning between a really loud section and you're taking the drums out for 3 or 4 bars and then bringing them in softly. That sizzle covers that transition and it sounds really wonderful. So spending money on good cymbals, that cost us, for those 3 cymbals, it was $1,200. We're like, whew, that's a lot. It's not. I mean, you spend more on your practice flags, you know, for marching band. So you can get really good cymbals and invest in it, and we've had those for over a dozen years. And when I put those on the Jazz One kid, we stopped getting comments about, you know, something's not sounding right. Your cymbals just aren't super awesome. Or this is a little weird. Use your own brands, use your own size choices. Some, like, those are probably too big for most of your junior high drummers that aren't playing real strong. Like, I probably wouldn't give them a 22 inch ride. Because you gotta use good technique to drive it, but it works great. That bottom one, I would love it if all of you bought it. If you all had time to go out and change the head on your bass drum pedal to the Vader vintage bass drum gear, it's this thing. If you have this on your jazz drum set, your comments about your bass drum being too loud will be gone. It'll be fixed. And your judges will be like, yeah, nice, because you just need the presence of it. You don't really need the attack. So that Q-tip there just takes away the attack. You can still play funk and fusion. You can still play modern stuff with it. But for most of us with young drummers that are heavy-footed, that fixes it, and it's $20. So, it's just one of those things. A drummer told me about. He's like, have you thought about switching out your pedal head? I'm like, I didn't know I could. I don't have to buy a whole new pedal. He goes, no, dude, it just unscrews with the drum key. I was like, oh, I'm stupid. So we switched it out for $20, and then we bought another one a week later for the Jazz 2 kit because we rehearsed at the same time. So for $20, you can eliminate your bass drum heaviness. Questions on any of that equipment stuff? All right. Cool. Well, For your acoustic bass, find an amp you love. You might have to do some experimenting. We're currently using a Mark bass amp. It's a 1x15 that's 300 watts, which is big enough to drive the band. And I got that recommendation from Alex Pershone and UNI. It's the Mark bass combo amp is the name of it. It's super lightweight. The youngest, lightest kid in our band can pick it up and carry it one-handed, which is awesome because I'm not getting any younger and things seem to be getting heavier. So I put it on a little overhead cart and set it up. We use the David Gage Realist pickup, which goes under the bridge. So you have to loosen the strings, get them pretty loose. You have to lift up the bridge. You have to put the David Gage Realist under the leg of your bridge peg, and then you install it. It's a pain in the butt to put on, but I haven't had to move it or change it in 20 years. We had a Fishman pickup, which is, I had that at Centerville. I had it at Cedar Falls when I got here, and those little clips would fly off. I was getting a tinny bass sound. I was always tweaking the EQ, or I'd be getting feedback because I'd have to amp up so high. If you can get it off of the Fishman and get the David Gage, it's like $320. It's a lot of money, but you're investing in your bass sound for the next 20 years. So then it's not that much money. It's worth thinking about. Bass players that I've talked to that gig a lot, they love that, because it doesn't get dislodged. So I trusted them, and I'm really, really happy with that sound that we're getting out of it. For those of you that have a vibraphone in your band, if you don't have a part, create one. Most high school vibers are terrible at comping. And if you give them a piano part and they see 4 notes, they're getting out 4 mallets and they're gonna play home notes on the downbeat all day long. You see, look, I'm a jazz vibist. Clunk, clunk, and they're in the way of the piano. And it's the same notes and it's the same texture. And your pianist is over there playing comping rhythms and your vibes player playing the same notes in the same register going clunk. And it sounds muddy and bad. So unless your vibes player is steadying with somebody and doing good jazz comping, don't let them comp. Just take it out. Gerald and I both, just have the vibes players be a melodic addition to the line. We don't have them ever play any comping. So now that makes more work for us, right? Because you can't just hand them a piano part now when there isn't a vibes part. You have to do some work. So where do you rip it off? Lead trumpet line's great. Lead alto line is great. Color with the trombone line is sometimes really cool. Doubling with guitar can sound really great. So those are where I find my options. And a lot of times now, I don't even have to write it out. I'll look at a chart and I'll say, oh, this chart doesn't have a vibes part. And I was doing Move Your Rug by Ryan Tiede. That's Jeff Hoffman, but Ryan arranged it. And I just emailed Ryan, I'm like, hey, do you happen to have a vibes part? I'm gonna do this chart. I have a vibes player. She's really good. No comping, I just need some melodic reinforcement. Would you consider sending me the XML file so I can make a vibes part easy? I don't wanna have to type it all. Because, I'll just make you one. And 20 minutes later, it hit my inbox. I'm like, oh, cool, thank you very much. And that's happened with Mike Hamill, Terry White, Paul Baker. Mike's done some stuff for me. I was doing a chart that didn't have backgrounds, and I needed backgrounds because I wanted to expand the solo section. And it was Mike's chart. And I said, hey, do you want me to write backgrounds, or would you be interested in adding to it? And he goes, oh, I'll just send you something later. And that night I had backgrounds. It was super helpful. And then it fit his chart, and it was his vibe, and not my woeful attempt at trumpet player backgrounds. And it was really helpful. So, reaching out to the people that are writing your charts, most of them are thrilled that you're playing your music. They're very excited to hear from you and want to help you out. That's just been my experience with about anything else. The sax section equipment, as we're talking about preparing our jazz band, is a really big deal. And I didn't know what a big deal it was. I always thought sax players were just beauties. And they're not. They actually have to have an opportunity to try try and keep up with the brass playing behind them. And the way to do that, the jazz mouthpiece is more open, it's got a bigger tip opening. Jazz reeds are different than classical reeds. You have to get your players, if you want your saxes to sound like jazz sax players, you have to get them on equipment. And there are some cheap options. The Dario Select, that's an affordable starter option. And for a lot of our kids in high school in Iowa, that'd be a great place to go. If they're a little bit stronger, more serious players who want to invest a little more, the Meyer for alto, the Autolink Tone Edge for soprano, tenor, and Barry, those are great brands to check out. But a lot of this is kind of like if you're a brass player and you're like, I don't get saxophone mouthpieces. Think of it, there's a 7C in the case for trumpet players. You know they're going to sound better on a 5 or a 3. It'll be more open and deeper and get a bigger sound. This is the same thing. And so we have to learn what those options are. And if you don't know, call your friends in Cedar Falls at Tenor Max and take your kids over there and set up an appointment. And they have, I don't know, 50 mouthpieces in a case. They can try them out. Call your friends at West or Rubens. I'm looking at mouthpiece options. Can you help me out? I don't know what to get my kid. Or talk to their teachers if they have one, or call your friends and say, what are some options for me? And it makes a huge difference. Chris Mertz just blew me up when I was teaching in Centerville, in the nicest way possible. But he came up after we had played and he was doing a clinic with us. And he said, all of your sax players are on classical mouthpieces and classical reeds. Why? What are you doing? I was like, oh, you know. And he goes, Kyle, you have a good band, but your saxes are literally trying to play fortissimo and make it sound good, and they're still getting buried. It's just a difference of equipment. And so I went back to the Centerville Band Boosters and I said, can I have $500 and can we buy a school set of jazz mouthpieces? Because my kids were, not loaded. $100 mouthpiece was a lot back in 2002. And it made an immediate difference. They came in the next week, we put them on. The kids sounded terrible for a couple of rehearsals because it's a whole different thing. But then, oh my goodness, all of a sudden, this wall of saxophone sound was there and blended beautifully with my brass. And that was the last time anybody said stuff. We ask our Jazz 2 kids and our Jazz 1 kids to play on jazz mouthpieces. And we tell them if you need a scholarship or if you need help finding a mouthpiece, or if it's out of your possibility of financial help, let us know and we'll talk to the boosters. We'll talk to our school and the supply budget if we have to, because it's that important. Your brass players can have fun with good equipment too. I love these easy buckets, and it's EAZY. They're made by a guy here in Iowa, actually. And they literally just hang on your belt. There's this little thumb strap here, and you can put your finger in it and drop it on the belt. You have to measure the bells. For most of the trumpets, it's going to be fine. Trombones, your kids are probably on 8, 7.5, 8.5. You need to double check the bell sizes. But those sound way better and function much easier and quicker than the old clip-on kind that scratch your bell up and sound bad. So if you want to invest in new buckets for your school, order these this spring and you'll have them next fall. The Stoneline copy is what we use. I put these up here because I see a lot of directors playing Ellington and using a straight mute. And that's technically wrong. It's a different sound when you use a pixie. So this is a trombone pixie, that's a trumpet pixie. It's a mini mute, it's really skinny, and it creates this super bright nasally tone, and your plunger fits over the end of the pixie. So if you're doing Ellington and it says plunger with pixie, you need those. You can get them on Amazon, get them from your music store, and it's not too bad of an investment. Questions on any of this so far? Cool. I'm gonna nerd out for a second. I hate ePrint, and I love ePrint. Okay? So if you're buying PDF jazz charts and you are making your scores, please print them double-sided. And then consider buying this little lovely binder that you can get on Amazon for $49. And you can shove 12 sheets of paper in there. You can do it vertically or landscape, portrait or landscape. And you can bind your scores, and it's awesome. You feel like a pro. You're holding a score that you made, and you print it off, and it's not embarrassing. You're not like flipping. I did a clinic with a friend, and they're not interacting, but they had printed from ePrint, and printed front and back, but it was upside down. And so he was rehearsing his band, and we're doing the clinic, and I get up and I'm like, hey, can we look at this sax line? And I'm like, and he goes, oh, you have to flip it. I'm like, oh. So he's one page, and he's flipping it over, and the staple was in the corner. I'm like, oh, you're wasting so much time. He's like, yeah, but I don't have time to print it off. I'm like, you don't have time to rehearse like this, though. So bind your scores. It's cheap. That one comes with 100 binders with the initial investment. And I just keep it in the band office. We use it with our concert band stuff. We use it with our jazz band stuff. If you're taping your parts for your kids, or if you have more than 2-page student parts, I print my 2 pages on 11 by 17 and then fold it. So you can do your duplicate combine 11 by 17 so they're not taped. But if you have 3 or 4 pages, you're gonna have to tape. This micropore tape, this finger tape, lasts forever and ever and ever. But if you scotch tape, the kids are folding it and it creases, and all of a sudden the 3rd page is falling off. You usually add context, or whatever. So that tape on your student cards will hold up for the whole season and more. And it's pretty cheap. Like 12 rolls was as cheap as 12 rolls of scotch tape. And it's just kind of one of those dumb things I saw a Darcy James Arby post. He's a brilliant composer, arranger, and he was talking about score prep and about part prep and not passing on things to your students that won't last, and making sure that you're rehearsing comfortably as well. So my comrade does the same thing.
Half inch width.
Half inch width, yep. And I couldn't get half inch, I used 3/4, it also worked. It's just a little fatter. So it's totally worth doing. It'll make you happy. Make your life better. The last thing I want to talk about here with our first section of this clinic is the setup. And this is a picture of my band playing at a concert in our auditorium, which will be blown up after this year because we're in school. Thankfully. But what I kind of wanted to talk about was where do you put people? And we all have our own ideas. This is what's worked for me. You do you. But I like my saxes more spread out than some people do because I want the trombones to have windows. I want my trumpets over my trombones' heads. I put my lead players right down the middle. My jazz guitar is right in front of the drum set, kind of by the sax section, because they play a lot together. The pianist is right next to the guitar, and the bass player's in the crook of the piano, so that out of one ear they hear the chords from the piano, and out of the other ear they hear the right cymbal. I've got vibes and congas behind the drum set. For those of you that put vibes in the front of the stage, I'll offer this. When I hear your band in an auditorium, I hear vibes more than saxophones. And so we run a vibes mic and can control the volume. So they're not heard, they're just heard at an appropriate level coming through our mains. And at Iowa State at Jazz Champs, if you're in CY Stevens, you can have your vibes mic'd. You can put them back there and they'll be heard. If there's not a mic in there back there, it's a little bit different, all right? But I like it back there so that they're part of the rhythm section. I don't like the congas in front of the drum set because I find that they overbalance the room, and I find that the timing phases even just a little bit, and I hate phasing. It's really hard to deal with. So that's my setup, and it's just about practicing how you not perform. I think everything on that slide is what I just said. So, except for this. Practice using mic stands. It's so funny to me when we bring out the mic stands with mics on them, and they're not plugged in. Like it's a mic on a mic stand, on a boom stand in rehearsal. And the sophomores in our band or the new people are like, oh, and they stand up and the mic's over here. I'm like, no, stand up, pull the mic up, adjust it. And then sit down, pull it down and adjust it. Or when we're teaching our trumpet players and brass trombone how to use the mic, we had them get on a mic that was plugged in and play this far away. And then we had to play this far away, and then we had them put the mic in the belt. That sounds weird. But playing with mics before contest is a really, really, really good idea. Most kids, when they're at contests, stand up and they look at the microphone stand and they look at their director and they look at the microphone stand. I think they're afraid of getting electrocuted or something. Right? So teach them how to use it, and then they'll be able to use it. When we played at Midwest, the requirement was that every student in the band had to be on a microphone, which terrified me. I was like, what? No. There are kids on some parts that don't need to be heard. Right? Not every kid deserves a microphone. and they said, no, you have to practice with it. You have to prepare them. They need a microphone. We're running a 64 channel board mixed into a 32-bit sound. And it's going to be pro. The guy running it's the retired Air Force Airman of Note jazz guy. He's running the board, and that's what Mark Custom Music is plugged into, and that's where your CD comes from. I said, oh, and they're good. You're going to want a memory of this. And it's kind of, you guys, it's the best recording I've ever had of anything. And part of it was the kids playing, but part of it was the recording quality, and that we practiced with mics, and everything was balanced, and then there was some post-production, like, we need a little more third drum here.
No.
You know, the sax solely got a little buried here because the drummers playing kind of heavy. And so they did that in post, but like, even live, the sound coming out was incredibly mixed and really well done. So, use the mics well. Most people don't, and it drives me crazy. You know, if you're playing at Talkhorn and you're not using mics on your saxes, you're probably burying your saxes and making them work harder. After you work that hard to get right notes to come out and make them sound swinging, you're losing them in that room. So, use them. They're there, and the guys running the board do a good job. Your kids just don't have to know how to use them properly. So that was a whole lot of equipment, a whole lot of talk, and a whole lot of prep to get the year going. But you're still not going yet because you got to pick music, right? So what are we going to do? I've got 3 key ideas here. And the first one might be the most important. You have to pick music when you teach and rehearsing. You can't assume that they're going to practice at home. You can challenge them, you can push them, but it has to be kind of attainable. If they don't practice at home, you'll still sound good because you picked what they can play. Also, there's snow days. There's AP tests. There's semester finals. There's all the worst kinds of interruptions. So if you pick things that you can play and teach in rehearsal, and you don't have a program, you are winning. And I don't mean winning trophies. I mean you're winning at teaching jazz. All right? Because then you'll have time to get into the cool stuff. The cool stuff in jazz that makes it way different than concert band is solo. It's also oftentimes the most terrifying, right? So if you have a couple of unicorns, amazing soloists, and you want to find a chart that really lets them show off, they're studying with somebody and they sound incredible, or they went to jazz camp and they came back and they can play, you know, all the things you want, or they can play, you know, something fun that's a longer form. Find a chart for those 2 special kids that's longer form and let them blow. And hopefully the ensemble parts are easy. You know, my favorite thing is to find an ensemble piece that's like a grade 2.5, 3 with grade 5 changes. Because then the band sounds great and my 1 or 2 soloists sound really special. And it didn't take that much work from me. You also need to find charts for your not unicorns. So if you have 1 or 2 kids that are AA+, you need to find something that your C-level improvisers can play and learn and develop on so that they don't stay at a C level. If you don't have any soloists, find something that's an easy band and teach using call and response. So like an 8-bar form, Calypso Angelico, we played at Midwest, is a Steve Shanley chart. It's 8 bars, and at the bottom of every part is a scale for every kid to improvise using. And Barnhouse does that really, really well. Other composers have started doing that too, like, hey, if this is a song you can use a pentatonic scale on for this whole A section, here's what I would like to hear your kids try to start with before they dive into changes. Oftentimes when I'm judging, I hear a lot of people jam more ensemble at me. And they're like, I don't have very many solos, so I'm going to give you 17 straight minutes of ensemble with one soloist. And I would argue that you're kind of doing it wrong. I would love to hear less ensemble and more solo. Because you've got a rhythm section there that's got to interact. You've got to teach them how to develop that idea. And I've always said, if I can solo in it, I can teach a kid to do it. And I've played a lot of solo jazz stuff in college and combos, and I feel pretty comfortable with most of it. There's a couple times when I've been like, okay, Johnny Harlop, you're really good, and here's this chart, and I'm not going to be able to solo on it at a super helpful level, but you're studying and you're special, so here's some hard changes, and I'm okay with this. Johnny went on, played lead tenor, and you and I jazz one for 4 years, and it's great. So if I can't solo on it, I'm going to find them somebody to stay with. They're probably already studying somebody if I'm not able to keep up, or else I'm not going to pick it. And take time in your big band rehearsal to teach solo. Oftentimes we get caught up in getting the right notes and rhythms and punt on getting solos ready. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, contest is tomorrow. Ooh, our home jazz show's in 3 days, and I haven't really figured out solo sections. Let's just have parade of solos go up, and good luck. Here's the blues scale. Just give it to them in the right key and pray, right? So take your time. Again, you haven't over-programmed, right? You pick music that you can teach in rehearsal, so you'll have time to get to this stuff. It's really, really helpful. As you're programming, please pay attention to how you're doing it. I will have an idea, like, oh, that could be an opener. And then I'll find 3 or 4 other openers. And then I'll come back to it, and I'm like, oh. And then one time, I ended up with 3 charts in a row that were 144 on the metronome, enough. And guess when I figured that out? It was a couple of weeks before the performance, and I went, oh. Boy, this all sounds the same to the audience when you're running back to back to back, because I just kind of done them in a vacuum. Like, oh, here's this cool opener. Oh, here's this cool closer. Oh, here's this cool middle tune. So be smart. Get a playlist going. Change your styles. Change your keys. Major, minor, everything enough. You can play 3 swing tunes. I did it once. It was fun. I opened with a modern arrangement of Autumn Leaves at 192 on the metronome, and then I did an Ellington thing at 100 CD panorama, and then I did a shuffle closer at 140. And it sounded like 3 different charts, and they were all swing. And it was 2021 composer, it was a 1940s composer, and then it was like a 1970s shuffle. And it was cool. And it was like, you didn't play a funk tune. You didn't play a ballad, and I didn't miss it. I'm like, good. Ballads are hard. There was a time when we all had to play them. There's an IHS many rules, and some of you still think you have to. You don't. You don't have to play a ballad. Long notes played by young musicians often are out of tune with bad tone. So why show it off? Pick something else instead. If you have a swing at 100, that sounds slow, but kids can solo on it. Like CP Panorama sounds super hard, but the solo section is 12-bar blues and D flat. So it's pretty fun to mix and match. As you're looking at lit, don't pick what I picked. Pick what features your kids best. Ellington wrote for his band, pick for your kids. Look at the solo section first. And that sounds obvious, but I forget to. I'm like, this is such an awesome chart. And I order it, and it gets to Cedar Falls, and then I open it up, and I go, oh, well, I'll just put that in the file. I guess we can't do that. There's nobody in my band that can solo on this. This is too hard. There's a Matt Harris chart that's like, sounds really great. It's like Cabeza de Carne or something. And I ordered it, and I hadn't done my homework. I was like, this will be awesome. This is a super fun Latin closer. It's fiery, it's exciting, and it's showed up, and it's in concert D. You ever heard your saxes swing in E major? It doesn't sound very good. It, in fact, sounds pretty terrible. So look at your solo section, kind of play along with it, figure out what key it's in, and then spend your money. We've all done this. Should I play 3 or 4 tunes? Here's what I think. is there a great reason to do the extra tune? I love 3. I've done 4. And it's super funny. The last time I did 4, Alexa Tarantino was judging the champs. And I had a loaded band. It was 2019. And they were really, really good. And I made her mad. We started the 4th tune. She goes, I don't know why you're playing this. I was really happy. And I'm like, but I had time. And I've got another tune, and it sounds really fun. In my brain, I'm talking to Alexa. And she goes, you should have just stopped. That would have been really awesome. I would have been right at the top of the ballot and everything. I was like, oh, that hurt. That was when we got verbal comments. And I'm hearing her say this, I'm taking it really hard. And then I thought about it more. I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. And then the next time we had champs, we didn't have it in 20 because of COVID. I did 3, and I was really happy. And it gave us space. It gave us time in between. If you're doing 4, each tune's probably 5 minutes, right? Because you got to stop at 20. And you're limiting the amount of solos, and you're expanding the amount of ensemble that you need. So, are you really doing jazz, or are you doing concert band with rhythm section? You have to ask yourself that. The other thing that you're doing is a tune ends, your kids throw their music on the floor, and you're doing this during the applause, and 1, 2, 3, go, and your chart starts while the audience is still clapping and the judge is trying to finish a sentence from their last piece. I'm a huge fan of this. So, do you? Because I'll tell you this, last year at Champs, one of the judges goes, yeah, I could have used another tune from you. So I've gotten both sides of it. I've been, why are you doing a 4th? Would have loved to hear your band play another one. And I think the trick is the judge being happy enough to say, I would have loved to hear one more. Good, we left you wanting more. Because I'll tell you what, that maxed us out. Doing this set with these songs and this solos and getting the rhythm section involved, that maxed out what we could do. A 4th tune would have really taken it from an A+ to like a B+. So, that's my thoughts. Don't get stale. If you're able to, when you start your year, pass out a bunch of music and kind of go, okay, I want to focus on these 3 to start, and then I want to maybe swap this one out here mid-year after we've had a concert. We do our home show, and then we do telephone. And oftentimes, between our home show and our telephone performance, I'll change a tune out just to keep it fresh. And then the parents that are coming heard us at the home show, they hear a different thing at the jazz show. Then we have NEBA 2 weeks later, or 3 weeks, depends on the year. And I'll change another tune. So at that point, we've played 5 tunes, and I've been working on those more. And then we'll change another one out for a concert in March, and then we'll change another one out for Champs. And so by the time we get to April, we've played at least 7, 8 tunes, and we've also done a home show in the fall. So try and find a way to rotate. We get stuck. If you're going out every weekend, and you're like, I don't have time to get something else ready, well, maybe do one less contest. Maybe teach a couple more charts instead. Or maybe start the year with a plan on how you're going to rotate through. Because you can get your 3 ready and keep cleaning those 3 while also getting a 4th going. And then kind of swap. And I'm gonna pick a swing tune to teach this concept. And then I might find another swing tune in the same concept, and we'll learn it faster than we learned the first one because we've already been together for half a year. So it's possible to do it. Try not to get stale. What should I play? So this is what I do. I already talked about some of it. What works for you won't work for me. Just because you have a drummer and I have a drummer doesn't mean we can play the same chart, right? So be ready to pivot if it's not working. Don't dig in your heels and I'm gonna teach this. If you're fighting the kids, just move on. Just don't. Suggested lit lists are out there. There's a lot of bad lit on them. I've been through them. I've had to listen to a lot of music over the years and try and find stuff. And lit lists don't work for me. I have to just listen to tunes and go, this is my kids, this isn't my kids. One of my favorite ways to find tunes is to go to college concerts or listen on a live stream. And then it's going to be too hard, right? What Chris Mertz's band plays at UNI is not what the Cedar Falls band should play. But they're playing some composers that I can steal from. oh, that's super cool. You just did this chart by this composer I've never heard of. And I go to their website and I find a grade 3 chart that Chris isn't going to play, but I am. And so I really like finding music that way. And this is just a screenshot of my Google Sheet. If you want to know how crazy I am, this is what I got. Most of you probably. So it's title, time of composition, composer, arranger, publisher, year it was written, the grade, the style, the tempo, the form, the soloist needs, alto, tenor, fast, bebop players, that's Ryan Kaiser. More advanced trumpet, trombone feature, any nice brushes, drum spot, thad-like feature. So I've got all of that, and then if you scroll further over, you see the soloist part, and then range considerations, other considerations, maybe I'm looking for a chart by a female composer, maybe I'm looking for something, got a swing heart, decent blues that's new, a lot of ensemble, all that, and then my links are there. And that's like 200 something on my Google Sheet that I just keep adding to as I find charts, so that I have an easy way to sort through things. You can find music at any of those sites. Brava's new this year. Check it out. It's super cool. We did 2 charts this year from there. Female composers, run by Annie Booth and Alan Baylock. E-Jazz Lines is great. Their search function sucks. Sometimes you just got hit and miss. You can type in Pat Metheny and get like 3 pages worth of stuff. All those are places where I like to find music. Some of them are way advanced. It's Pro Jazz Charts, literally is Pro Jazz Charts, but there's a couple of grade 3, 4 things on there that are really cool. And there are also people I've worked with, or those publishers. A lot of that experience was from Midwest, and they were super kind and nice. People at Barnhouse were incredible. It's an Iowa company, and they were awesome. Yeah. Super fun stuff. Email them if you don't see something you like. Talk about commissioning. I encourage it. I've been part of 13 commissions for jazz band. You're like, what? How can you have done that? That's a ton of money. Again, it's cheaper than my color guard choreographer. So you can get an arrangement for $4,800. You can do an original for $1,000 to $2,000. I'm working with Ian in Circle right now. She's the composition jazz studies at Berkeley. I found a combo tune written by Brandy Younger that I really wanted to do as a big band chart. And I talked to her and she's like, yeah, I'll do it. That'd be way cool. And so I'll get that this fall. Worked with Steve a couple times for arrangements and it's just a lot of fun. It's fun to bring new music into the world. I highly encourage it. If you're doing commissioning, these are important things to ask. You have to be specific if you want a chart for you. You want woodwind doubles or not? You want solo changes in all part or just your unicorns? Do you need a notated bass line? Do you need suggested piano comping voicings? If you do, you ask for it. You're paying them. They'll do it. Melodic vibes parts, comping, both max ranges for your player's timeline, and then you probably need to be flexible with your timeline. Just about every composer I've worked with or arranger, we say, hey, I need this by September 1, and they'll go, okay. And then September 1 comes up, hey, I got this, I'm a little behind. September 15th, okay, yes, it'll be fine. The artistic process is more important than my deadline. So take a chance with some underrepresented composers too. All right, bring new music into the world, it's fun. I'm gonna zip through this last part because we all perform, but just a couple quick thoughts. Before you perform, bring somebody in. And when you call them, say, we can all practice this together. What kind of honorarium can I arrange for you, right?
What kind of honorarium can I arrange for you?
Because you're asking somebody to come to your school. They might have to drive an hour, might have to drive 2 hours, then they're gonna work with your kids for an hour or two, and then they're gonna drive back. Please respect their time. It doesn't have to be much, you know? If I ask somebody from Iowa City to come up, it's an hour and 40-minute drive and a 2-hour clinic and another hour 40, that's 6 hours for that. And they're probably gonna stick around and talk to me a little bit afterwards. And so I wanna respect their time, so I ask, hey, what would make you happy so you come back if I ask you again? And it's oftentimes cheaper than it should be, right? If I call a guy to come fix my refrigerator, it's $85 an hour. If I call a jazz clinician to come drive 2 hours, work with my band for an hour or two, drive back. They'll be like, you know, I'd do it for 150. So okay, and then just talk to you about band boosters. Bring in somebody who does something better than you. If you struggle to teach soloing, bring somebody in. I might come in and work with my soloist one time. I'm like, hey, I've got the ensemble where I want it. Would you come in and just work with the soloist for an entire hour? That was one of the most fun things I've ever done. You know, I bring in Alex Persona and say, hey, would you come in and just work with my bass player and rhythm section guys? I'm going to run rehearsal, and whenever you need to stop me. But would you be back there tweaking and fixing? And so he's just in the weeds the whole hour, and I'm just running rehearsal, and the rest of the kids don't know what's going on. It's great. The hardest one is the everything clinic. Just, hey, would you come make my band better? That's hard. There's like very few people who are really, really good at that. If they're doing their job, it's really, really hard to do that. There are experts that can do it. And then please stay out of the way. I count the band off, and I walk away to clinic, or I let them count it off, and then I sit down with my legal pad and I just take notes the whole time. Have high standards. Read the program notes in the front. There are tips and tricks in there. Oh my goodness, the Ellington stuff's full of it. We played Blue View by Mike Conrad last year, and the whole, like, this is the vibe, this is the rhythm section, this is what your drummer needs to listen to and study. There are modern interpretations if you watch the Essentially Ellington Festival, and you'll hear some of the bands that are playing there play things very, very differently. So don't be afraid to change some of it or add stuff. Where can you play besides a contest? There's a whole bunch of ideas. I really recommend that. I already talked about that with stands and everything. Please enjoy what you're doing. When you're performing on stage, if you look like Maria Schneider when she's directing, you're gonna have great time, and so will your kids. I mean, her band is not ours, right? It's full of the top players in the room. But man, like, choose joy when you're on stage. Like, let it be. Don't just be out there like, I'm sweating, I'm conducting, jazzing, loud jazzing. Count them off. Get over on the side if you can. I mean, maybe your drummer's really young and dumb and can't. But like, if you can, parents love to get pictures of their kids without you in it, without you shaking hands. Teach your kids to be sincere, please. Like, don't tell them, hey, you got to cheer here. Like, Timmy's gonna play and we're all gonna go, yeah. No. Don't do that. Be sincere. If they want to cheer, let them. If they want to move, let them. If they want to dance, let them. But it should be natural. It should be from their spot in their heart. It's my last slide. Watch the show The Bear on FX. It's on Hulu. There's the scene in season 2 that it hit, and I was watching the scene. It's like 2 minutes of the best dialogue of season 2. But basically, it's this: 2 guys talking about cooking, and one wants to be this really great chef, and one already is. They don't say mess up. How'd you get good at this? Honestly, just made a lot of mistakes. That's the secret. Just F up. Yeah, maybe F up. But I didn't want to put that in a slide on professional conference. Where you're all going to take pictures of it and send it back to my principal and sponsor. That's kind of my quick run through from those 3 sections. Any quick questions? If you want to stick around and talk to me, I'm here. I'll be out in the hall because David Wall wants this room next. So.
Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you very much for coming. Thanks for coming.